time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure, so let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
the Island Armory,
Hacker Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. Host Mike Adams sitting in the cabin tonight on a pleasant Wednesday evening here in Michigan.
We have had a little bit of a stretch that the weather has not been too bad. 80s.
Yeah,
it's been a little cool nice. In the evening.
Nice.
It has been pretty nice, you know, and it's just one of those things. Like we were talking about just before we started recording, we're going to be in September real quick.
It's going to hit us before you know it.
Goose season, youth season, Liberty season, hunt, and then 15th will be small game, right?
Yep.
So
I tell you, let's get going tonight, and let's help the people who help us.
All right, let's do that. First off, Buck Baits, hey, you got to check them out. It's getting about that time. Order your scents. Go check out their website for 20% off your order. UNJ20 over at buckbaits.com. If you cut your way through the woods and you want 15% off your order, easycutproducts.com. Use the promo code UNJ15 off over there. It's not too late to get your Packer Max. Get a hold of Lincoln and get $25 off your order with UNJ25 over at packermax.com. The Island Armory, if you're keeping up with them on Facebook, they are getting new inventory every day, it seems. So go check out the islandarmory.com. Use the promo code UNJ10. You'll get 10% off your order when you check out. Goose season. No better time to get a goose call or another one. And if you use the code UNJ10 over at JPO Game Calls, you'll get 10% off your order. Last but not least, Deer Camp Coffee. We're drinking our blend tonight.
Yes, we are.
We're drinking the UNJ blend. And I tell you what, you go to deercampcoffee.com, you use the promo code UNJ10, you get 10% off your order. And why don't you get a bag of our stuff?
The Up North Journal Medium Roast.
That's right. And we don't have a slide for them yet, but we'll have these up. Miller Deer Tracking was on the show last week. He is graciously offering 20% off your next deer tracking if you give him a call, if you use the promo code UNJ20. And a couple weeks ago, we had Zion on, and they are offering us 10% off at southern.indianabaitco.com, promo code UNJ10. Look for those slides to be introduced, and we'll have them on the website.
There you go. And where are we going tonight?
We are going all the way up to Newberry, where it is a balmy 70 degrees, sunny. Get over to Cedars, buy a pizza, have some coffee, some Deer Camp coffee.
There you go. And big shout out to FM 123 for carrying the show for us tonight.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, I say we jump into it.
You know, have you ever wanted to go be, like I alluded to, you ever want to go be stuck on an island?
I don't want to be stuck on an island. I'd like to go to an island, play around for a week or two, and then come back home.
Right?
I don't want to be stuck with you, Gilligan.
Hey, Skipper, why don't we go to Brad and Joe Wright from Fenton, who did exactly that for a week.
Hey, guys, what's up?
How you doing?
Doing great tonight. Great weather, great time to be in the outdoors, and it's a great night to talk about what you guys have been up to here recently. Isle Royale, man, wow. That's just like a place I see that's far, far away, pristine wilderness, really backcountry, and I've always wanted to go, whether it be hiking, camping, or kayaking. And you guys went and did this. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what got you to get into wanting to go do this? What's the drive? I know watching you on Facebook, we're friends for a few years, and I started seeing you start to train. I kind of tipped it off. I'm like, oh, yeah. What's he up to?
Yeah. So, well, you know, because we've been friends, I like the outdoors. I like hunting and fishing and kayaking and biking, and tried to get my kids into that. And a few years ago, I was playing darts with my buddy over at his house, and we were talking about, we should go do some hiking. He worked at GM, and a coworker had talked about his trip to Isle Royale when he was a younger man, and he hiked the island solo, and he just romanticized this idea that you're going out to this beautiful national park in the middle of Lake Superior. And so we planned a trip, and the first time I went was 5 years ago. and we had a great time, and it was tough, but it was a lot of fun. And when I was getting ready to go, my son, who 5 years ago was 9, and I didn't think was quite ready to do it, was like, hey, can I go with you, Dad? And I'm like, there will come a time where you will get to go, but not on this trip, bud. And so through the past couple of years, you know, this didn't work out or whatever. We started planning about a year ago, and I asked my son, Joe, hey, you think you're up for it? You think you want to go? And he was like, absolutely. So we started training, putting weight in our packs and getting out and putting miles on our boots, and then we took off.
And Joe, now you're freshman in high school, and you got all excited to do this. You know, from your aspect, you know, going to be going with Dad hiking. What was it like feeling?
I definitely heard a lot of stories of Isle Royale, and it was kind of just like, hey, we're going to go out and be in the woods and do a bunch of walking and see some moose. And I was like, yeah, I want to be in the woods for a week with everything I need on my back.
And
so, yeah.
Speaking of weight in your backpack, how much total did your backpacks have in them, weight-wise?
I think you and I were really close to each other.
Yeah, I think we're at around 34 without water.
Okay.
Yeah, when because we took the seaplane, and we talked about that earlier, but they have a weight limit on the seaplane that your pack can be no more than 40 pounds max. And so all of us, the 4 of us that went, were really weight cautious. And I mean, we're taking out scales and measuring ounces and putting things out of our pack and putting things back in. But yeah, we tried to be right around that 35-pound mark.
So each of you having 35 pounds, there's 4 of you. You're heading off to Isle Royale. And when you started training, how was those first couple of days of just getting that weight into your backpack and you know, training over at the park and whatnot on the trails? What was that? Could you start to see the difference as you started to get into the training?
Oh, yeah. Joe had some back pain from an injury in track from last year. And so I was like, we got to get out there. We got to put some weight on, and we got to see if you're going to be okay, because we don't want to get out on that island and have there be a problem. So we started off kind of easy. Hey, let's go out and just do a couple of miles. Okay, let's put a little more weight on it. Let's try to go 2.5. Let's go 3 miles. Let's see if we can go 5 miles today. And when we needed to, you know, we would take them off and take a break like we did on Isle Royale. And I'm like, and we tested out some of our gears. We did that. We went down hiking by the Brighton Recreation Area and went hiking in the rain, made a meal down there, got out our little camp cookers, our little jet boils, and the more we did it, the more excited we were getting. Like, yeah, this is going to be real. This is going to happen.
Setting up your tent and making sure everything packed back in what you packed out. And
absolutely.
Because the typical thing we have is, you know, you take it out of the box once and it doesn't go back in the box. But,
right?
You know, it's like,
that's what
right.
the instructions are for.
Right. But when you're on Isle Royale, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because you got no electricity, you got no nothing, right? So you are basically... You know, as you're getting ready to do this, you're making sure your lights that you were using, were they battery operated or were they?
Yep, we had headlamps. I've got a headlamp that's got a rechargeable light in it, and Joe's was double our AAA batteries. And then I also carry a redundant flashlight in my pocket, which wasn't necessary, but I'm always comfortable having a backup. And so we did have cell phones with us, and we did have portable power banks, because I wanted to be able to take pictures the whole time. We've known from past experience that you can't always make calls or text from the island because cell signal is spotty. But I wanted to be able to have photos everywhere we went, so I did take a battery backup.
Okay. So how many? So if you're going to stay there for a week and you want to take unlimited photos, basically, how many battery banks did you take with you?
So that's a great question. I have an older iPhone. I've got an iPhone 8, and I took one. I want to say it was a 20,000 battery backup, which I don't think at this point is very big compared to what you can get. And when I wasn't using my phone, it was either off or it was on airplane mode, just to try to conserve battery. And I made it the whole week with battery to spare left in my bank, just trying to be judicious with my phone.
Okay. So the key to that is making sure that when you're not using it, that you're taking it in and put it in airplane mode, so it's not searching, it's not on, shutting it down, powering it back up when you want to take photos. Gotcha. So I gotta imagine you weren't using your phone as a GPS then.
We were not using our phone as a GPS. We did have a couple of just like small compasses, button compasses. The fact is that the trails, by and large, are really well marked, and so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, no, we're heading this way, and we don't really need to have a GPS. Now, I did have a buddy who had one of those InReach emergency, because if something goes bad and you really need help, that's the only way you're going to get it is through like a satellite type deal.
Okay.
So that was a little bit of nice insurance to have, knowing if something went horribly wrong, we could get some help.
So when you're there, seaplane drops you off, ferry drops you off, they say, bye, they're gone. And you say, okay, we've got our trip scheduled that we're going to come back. Let's say day 7, we fly back out the following Sunday. We get dropped off on a Monday. We're going to come back Sunday. We're going to fly home or ferry back home to the mainland. Is that pretty much set in stone? There's really no way to get out unless, like you said, you've got a beacon, a location beacon?
Right. And so, okay, so I'm a teacher, and I didn't have to worry about a work schedule. The two other guys that we went with, John and Mark, are both fully employed full time, and so they had to get back for a work schedule.
Okay.
So the seaplane, I'm trying to think of that schedule that it keeps, but it flies in and out pretty regular. And I think in the problem, of course, is like it's a small plane and it's usually full.
Gotcha.
So there have been times, I think, where it's like, okay, the plane seats 6, but we've only got 5 going on this trip. We can take one other person back with us, and then you might have your party split up. And there's usually always seats on the ferry if you don't mind taking a little bit more time to get back. The Ranger is a really, really, really big ferry that can accommodate a lot of people. And so if something were to go wrong and you didn't make your schedule, there are ways to sort of like adjust and still get back.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're not isolated there.
You're not. You don't have to.
It's like, well, I broke my leg. I'm kind of hosed now. I got to stay here for
Right.
5 more days.
Yeah. No.
So with the training that you were doing, how did Joe's back? Did it stand up to the rigors?
So I did quite a bit of physical therapy, and the start of our training was Dad had a pack on and I did not, just to play it safe and kind of get my body moving on its own, right, without a bunch of extra weight on my back. But physical therapy did wonders, and I started putting my pack on and putting more weight in my pack, and just more weight and more miles, and got back to normal. So yeah,
that's awesome. That's one thing. I do have to admit, physical therapy is a wonderful thing. It's awesome.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you. You talked about the pack. You talked about training. Obviously, if you're putting boots on the ground, you need good boots. And maybe I saw in a couple of the photos you had walking sticks with you as well. Talk about the boots and the walking sticks and why they're so important and spending good money on good gear.
Right. So I learned from my buddy John who went. Walking sticks were pretty much an essential. You're going over down trees. You're doing a lot of stuff, and when you've got a pack on your back that's 40 pounds. And you get off kilter just a little bit, it can really be a problem. And so every little bit, if you're stepping over a big log, you've got 3 points of contact and 1 foot's crossing. So I would absolutely say for anybody that was going to do it, I would highly recommend trekking poles. They don't have to be fancy ones. They don't have ours. Most of our stuff we did not super expensive stuff. Footwear, key. If something goes down with your feet, you really are in a world of hurt because the only way you're getting out is on your feet. I had a pair of Merrell hiking shoes, but we also, through experience, found out that people will go up there and hike in tennis shoes. As long as they're comfortable footwear, as long as they've got good support, I would say that almost equally as important as shoes is good socks. Right. Getting some like smart wool socks or something that's moisture whisking so you really can avoid blisters. And we made sure that we took some med with us. We had some first aid. We had some moleskin, and we had some different tape. My son had some of that kinesthesia tape. and we would just make sure ankles are taped up. You know, if you got a toe that's rubbing, tape that up, and just try to prevent stuff before it got bad.
So you were doing some preventative maintenance as you were making that trek, because like you said, if something goes awry in day one, you got 5 more days to deal with it, right?
Right, absolutely. And we did run across a gentleman a few years ago, and we saw him at a campfire. We're sitting there and we're pulling off our boots, and his feet just looked like burger. I felt so bad for the guy. He just blistered city.
Ooh.
And knowing he was out there with a group of Boy Scouts, and knowing he had, days of hiking in front of him, I really felt bad for the guy.
Well, that's one thing, like you said, and it's not like you can run to the corner and go to your CVS and get some
ointment
right.
or
whatever,
bandage,
right? Yeah. You're basically carrying your entire everything on your back,
Yep.
So,
and I would highly recommend the medical side too. Taking some triple antibiotic cream, taking some. Of course, you're going to take some bug spray. Ibuprofen for some aches and pains, some bandages. Just making sure you got at least the bare minimum to take care of yourself if a little something were to happen.
Absolutely.
So looking at, we haven't covered what was in your pack, but looking at everything that most people think that goes into your pack, what's the one thing you better not leave home without it, because you're not going to get it there, and it's an absolute top 4 or 5?
Sleeping system.
Bed.
Okay. Sleep.
Yep.
I really highly recommend you got a really solid air pad. And they can get pretty heavy, and I would suggest getting one that's insulated, because it can get cold on that island. It got down into the 30s a couple of times when we were there. And then a really a solid sleeping bag, something that's lightweight but warm. We had marmot bags. I had was gifted a gift card to a outdoor store, and I ended up buying the marmot 30-degree bag and found it to be perfect for something like Isle Royale. And so for, I think it was birthday or Christmas, you ended up getting the same pack.
Yep.
And because if you can't recover and have a halfway decent night's sleep, and I never sleep great in a tent or on the ground, but it could be a lot worse. So I would say definitely a good solid sleep system and a good pillow. And again, you don't have to spend tons and tons of money, but I would say you don't want to skimp on those things. You really want to have a good night's sleep.
So you got to get some separation between you and the ground, so it's not sucking all the heat out of your body, and you wake up with severe cramps or hypothermia.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and it's amazing how fast you can lose heat, even in a good sleeping bag, because I'm sure you've been in sleeping bags before. You know that the part that you're lying on gets compressed, and there's no R value, and so it's almost like not even having a sleeping bag.
Right. Okay.
I tell you what, you got to get a good night rest and sleep, because that just sets you up for the next day.
Yeah. One last question, and we're going to take a quick break. What's the one thing you took that you're like, man, I'm glad I brought this. I didn't think I'd need it.
Didn't think it would need it? Did you have something?
I was really worried that I would be struggling to carry that pack every day.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, if I'm not going to be using it at all times, it's not coming with me. Probably
the saw?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a folding camp saw, just in case we were going to have a campfire, and you got to process your own wood, and it was like, do we really need to take this? It's ounces,
right?
And we ended up using that saw a lot to make several fires at different campsites.
There you go.
Okay.
So it was worth the wait.
Right? Exactly. Right? So coming up on our first break, we'll take our first break, and we've got some questions lined up.
I bet. All right, we're going to step outside, take a first break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
All right, so we're on Isle Royale. We've kind of got a few of the necessities out of the way. Got any questions in the chat tonight?
Absolutely. First one is I lost already. Oh yeah, how big is the island?
That's a great question.
So
total acres or square footage, I'm not sure.
Okay,
it's
so
roughly.
I got the numbers for you just in case I can help you out. Is like
Okay.
So the length of the island is 45.98 miles.
Yeah.
And the maximum width of the island is 8.699. And the total square area is 206 square miles.
That's pretty big.
That is pretty
It's a pretty
big.
good sized island.
And I do believe the moose got there through the ice, going over the ice,
The ice
right?
bridge. You got
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. That was another question.
along with the wolves.
Right? Well, that's the other thing. What else is out there? Besides the moose that you took a picture of, what else did you see, animal-wise?
Fox, bald eagle. We saw sea otters.
Yeah, big sea otters.
We saw some big sea otters. We didn't see any wolves, and we didn't hear any. One thing that's important to note for anybody who's thinking about doing it is there are no deer on Isle Royale, so you don't have to worry about deer ticks.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought that.
That's a good to know.
Huh. Yeah, and there's no bear. We ran into a young lady one time who was wearing bear bells, and we were like, "What? Why are you wearing those?" And she didn't realize there were no bear on the island.
That was going to be my next question is about bear.
Yeah, there's no bear on the island, and we found out from a couple that have been running the moose study on the island that there are no porcupines or skunk on the island as well.
Really?
Okay. Interesting.
Wow.
So she said if you smell something that smells like a skunk, she's like, that's a fox, because they have a very musky odor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow.
Now, did you do any fishing while you were out there?
As a matter of fact, we did take along a fishing pole. We took along a fly rod, and Joe did some fly fishing and didn't catch anything. The last time I was on the island 5 years ago, we did manage to hook into a trout. But there is great fishing on the island. We were watching a gentleman fish off of a dock when we were by Daisy Farms, and he pulled out a lake trout that was 36 inches long.
Yeah.
It was a monster fish, and just everybody there was just like, oh my gosh.
So I got to assume as well, fishing-wise, you got to have a fishing license because it's still the state of Michigan, right?
Correct, yes. And you actually need to purchase a camp permit. So when you're out on the trail, and if you happen to get a shelter, they give you a little plastic sleeve or whatever, and you tag your shelter to let somebody know that you did in fact, buy a permit to be, because it is a national park. It's not a state park; it's a national park.
Right. So what are a couple of the other little things that you need to be aware of before you go, like buying the permit? How far ahead planning travel? Is there any other permits that you need?
Other than the one park permit, I don't think that's the only one you need. You need to plan your food and ration your food well. Weather it's Michigan weather, so we had beautiful weather. My buddy John went up there and they got lambasted with like the worst thunderstorms and hail and all sorts of stuff. So you need to be ready for that as well. So you got to make sure you got rain gear with you. Obviously, you want to take some bug spray. I learned about Picardin, which is like a lotion bug spray that doesn't contain DEET. Okay. So you didn't have that smell on you the whole time, and it didn't affect all your gear. Lifesavers. When you are walking and it's just like nothing but canopy and it's like the same thing over and over again, lifesavers were absolutely essential. That boost of sugar just brightened your mood, and I would absolutely recommend a little pocket candy for anybody.
So lifesavers. What's your favorite flavor?
I like the white ones.
I like the orange ones.
There we go. Speaking of that, hydration. Were you constantly drinking?
Yes. Joe, we each had two. We take Survivor filters because you're going to be pumping your own water. And even though Lake Superior is a pretty clean source of water, I wouldn't drink directly out of it. We were always setting up camp by a lake or on Lake Superior so we could pump fresh water. And then we had, each of us had 2 liters, bladders that were like a liter apiece that we carried. Our friends had camel packs, which is another great idea. But yeah, we were going through a lot of water, and it wasn't even really that hot when we were there. So if you were up there and it was like 80s, 85, you better be drinking and hydrating.
There again, you run into trouble with the cramps and whatnot if you don't hydrate. It can end up being bad news for the rest of the trip. Right?
I see something here, and I got to call him out. This blows my mind. Adam Wynn, place looks amazing, but he says he's never heard of it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask him that myself.
How do you live in Michigan and not hear of Isle Royale?
I know, right?
Especially an outdoorsman. Adam, that blows my mind.
You know, the plane, the boat. Do you have to sign up? Is there a waiting list? Is there, like, because this is the prime time for doing all this stuff here in Michigan?
Yes. So we made the reservation for the seaplane, I want to say back in like March or February. We made the reservation for that. The ferry is a little bit easier, again, because it can take more people. That's a little bit easier to book. The seaplane is a little bit more expensive, but if you're considering going and you just want to get there and start hiking, the fastest ferry is 3 hours long. And the slower one, the Ranger, the big one, is 6 hours. So we just want to, let's get up there, let's get on the island, and let's start hiking.
Gotcha. Well, now you'd mentioned we kind of tiptoed into the realm of food a little bit. Talk about preparing food, or did you buy food? Was it hydrated? I got to assume it was hydrated because I saw jet boils in some of your photos. And talk about, getting that food with you there and then eating it and how some of the issues around that.
Right. So Joe was our food camel. I carried the tent and I carried some other essentials, and Joe had all of our food, and that was done on purpose because I knew every day his pack would be getting a little bit lighter as we ate. And so mountain house type meals or camp meals, Backpackers Pantry are super popular up on the island because they're easy, they're self-contained, they got a lot of calories, and they're good, but they're expensive. And so for two of us, you're talking 3 meals a piece, 6 meals, you're talking about $60 a day in freeze-dried food. And so I started doing some research, and the great thing about the internet is there's always somebody on YouTube that can show you a better, cheaper, faster way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I watched a lot of videos of people, and this is how I put my camp meals together. And so we would do like a package of ramen noodles and some beef jerky. Or we would do some instant mashed potatoes and maybe a gravy packet and a packet of chicken. And to do that, we ended up spending like $3 on meals where, the Mountain House might be 10. I think our favorite meal was Thanksgiving. We made a Thanksgiving dinner, and I took a package of instant stuffing and instant mashed potatoes and a packet of chicken and a gravy packet. And yeah, you got to hydrate everything because, you're carrying water, you're carrying weight, so everything gets dehydrated. But for the most part, I would say our meals were okay. Like, I would eat a lot of those things just as a regular meal around here if I had to get something quick.
Does Joe agree on that?
What do you think?
Yeah, the quality of the food was good. There was not enough
quantity.
Yep.
And if you've ever fed a teenager,
there was not enough food.
He's ninth grader, man. Come on, he's got a hollow leg, right?
Two
hollow legs.
I would wake up and I would be having a full breakfast, and everybody else would just be drinking coffee. And then at lunch, some people just had a snack, and I would be eating a full meal. And at dinner, I would also be eating a full meal. And but it was not.
Okay, along them same lines, Joe. This question's for Joe. Is there something that your dad packed for you guys to eat, and you're like, no, I'm not going to eat that?
There was that one breakfast.
Oh, well, okay. This wasn't
Tell the truth.
This wasn't like we're gonna pack this and I didn't want to eat it. It was more like I didn't know this was packed and we're gonna eat it. So we had all of our meals, and like one of them was like a soup mix, like a dehydrated soup mix that you would like put some water in it and it would become
cheesy potato
soup?
Soup.
Yeah, something soup related, right? And I got out a breakfast meal. Going back, part of the problem was we didn't label all of them.
Oh, no. Uh-oh.
So it was kind of like, okay, this looks like breakfast.
But it wasn't breakfast.
But it wasn't breakfast. So I dumped, the contents of the bag into my cooker, and we put water in it, and not enough because we planned for enough water for a breakfast, not a soup. So it turned out really bad, and I was like super cold the previous night, and I was just like, I really want a nice little warm breakfast, and then it turned out to be really gross. So.
Did you eat it?
Yes, I did because I was hungry.
There you go. Okay.
And to be honest, it didn't taste bad. It just wasn't the breakfast he expected.
Right.
He was hoping for the steak and eggs.
Yes.
If I went for that, knowing that was what I was getting, it would have been fine.
Okay.
Right.
That's good.
Mind over matter.
Well, speaking of making food, and everything's pretty much dehydrated, you can't carry enough water with you. So obviously you're pumping water, right?
Yes.
And how much water do you need to pump just to have a meal? And then how much water do you pump to take on the trail with you while you're hiking to hydrate?
That's a great question. So most of the camp meals that we had required about a cup of water.
Okay.
And so we would use one of my bags for meals, and so that left me with one bag to drink, and then Joe had both of his bags.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I ran out, I'd be like, "Hey, can I have a sip of your water?" But usually that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I don't think we ever rolled into camp like without.
No, but we rolled into camp like a little low a couple of times. But then the first thing we would do once we would come into a camp is pump water.
Gotcha. Okay.
Was there anything to eat off the island? Was there anything on the island? Fruits, vegetables, or something?
It's edible.
Very, very, very tiny strawberries that were delicious.
Oh, you did find some wild
We
strawberries.
found some wild strawberries, and they were wonderful. And there's actually another friend of mine who went up there said that there's actually a lot of edible plants up on Isle Royale, and he was better at identifying them.
Yep.
So he felt better about, but I mean, there were dandelion greens and things of that nature. I didn't see any fiddlehead ferns, but I'm not great at identifying all of those things, so we just thought better safe than sorry.
There you go.
For sure. That's just one of the things. So they got their meals. I guess another thing they should probably say that top of the list is to label things correctly.
Labeling's probably very important.
Super important, especially if you're making your own.
And know your appetite.
Right?
Bring more food. Bring more food. Number one, bring more food.
So you put the man in charge that eats the most. You put him in charge of all the food. That surprises me. It really does. Could have been in trouble on day 2.
Right?
Right.
Why's your pack so light?
So did you happen to start cutting it very close towards the end on food? Did you have to ration it out?
No. We planned actually to have a little bit extra, and we ended up doubling up dinners the last night because we were like, we're not going to eat. Our last day of hiking from Daisy Farm into Rock Harbor. We're like, we're not going to stop for lunch. We're going into town because there is I call it a town, but there is a restaurant in Rock Harbor. There is a lodge. There is a little camp store that has chips and chocolate bars and popcorn and pretzels. So when you get into Rock Harbor, you're like, we're going to go have a burger and fries because we've been on the trail for so long. So we just decided to double up on our meals that last night.
Okay. Well, okay. So we showed the picture of you making fire, and you alluded to the camp saw, folding saw to make cut wood up.
Yes.
How did you make fire with just standard provisions, matches or lighter, or did you have some kind of flint napstone, or did you do the bow drill?
Did we use a match or lighter?
Well, I think most of them were lighter. 1 or 2 of them might have been.
Okay. Yeah, we do. We have practiced doing some primitive fire starting. Most of the time, we're taking a ferro rod with us.
Okay.
But just because it's heavy.
Yeah, but because again we were talking about weight, we're like ferro rod or this Bic lighter, and so weight was definitely a consideration for those.
Okay, so as long as the Bic lighter works, you're in business.
Absolutely.
And again, we had a redundancy of some matches in a Ziploc bag, so
gotcha.
A couple of ways. Fires were big social occasions on the island, especially at McCargo Bay, because that day it rained, and so we started a fire. And a lot of folks came out of the woodwork to dry out their boots, dry out their clothes, and it just turned into kind of a big party, and everybody was talking about where they were from. And so that idea that, the fire, builds community really is true, especially on Isle Royale.
So with that being said, when you were hiking, how often would you run into somebody then?
We ran into people. Honestly, I was pretty surprised at how often we ran into people, because we ran into people every day.
I don't think we're on a trail ever been passed by.
Right. And we saw the same group. We would see the same people multiple times throughout the hike, because a lot of people were you're crisscrossing paths. 5 years ago when I went, there were times where we didn't see anybody.
Okay.
But this trip, it was beautiful weather and a pretty popular time, and so we saw quite a few people.
And you were there in July. I don't know if we've covered that. I know we covered it before the show, but I don't know if we've covered it during the show.
Yeah, they were July, first week of July they were there. And, like you said, the weather they had was just almost picture perfect for hiking or kayaking, because I could see some of the pictures you're showing, Mike, that it was nice and calm.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's kind of good to hear, actually, because that means people are getting out, using our national parks and doing what they're there for. And unfortunately, I got to ask this question. Did you find people leaving garbage?
No.
Good.
Absolutely not. It really, truly is like one of the most pristine places you'll ever go. I've got a story for you. It's a little bit gross, but I've got a story for you. My friend John was talking to this guy who hiked it, and he's hiking by himself, and he's on the trail, and he comes across a Ziploc bag that happened to be somebody's latrine.
Okay.
This guy picks it up and carries it like 12 miles to the next camp so he could put it in the garbage.
Wow.
So the people that you're going to run into up there really do have an appreciation for the outdoors and the beauty of that place. And I've seen people do a really good job of taking care of it.
So that's good to hear that, they're only leaving footprints, right?
So he was taking care of somebody else's business. He was taking care of business.
He was taking care of business.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, come on.
That was good. That was good. One of the comments we're seeing on the live chat is, I won't mention her name right away, but she seems to think that Joe's got it right. Bring more food. Would you like to guess who that is?
I know who that is. There's not a doubt in my mind. Not a doubt.
Joe, you're leading the pack here with the bring more food category.
It's funny that this got brought up because we were actually talking about this show the other night, and it got brought up because we want a kayak up there. And I said, or she mentioned, maybe, we need to have something else to bring with us to pull the gear. And I said, like another float boat. So, and tether it to one of our kayaks and pull our gear along. But that being said, though, we might need two if we're going to take enough food for both of us, because I eat a lot.
Well, you say when you go kayaking that Nancy always has food and snacks.
We always prepare, and that's something like what they did. They prepared for it. But we always take high energy foods. We take stuff with protein in it, and carbs. And then we do take some stuff with a little bit of fat, but we're only out for a day. Maybe it's all day, but we want, and we take plenty of water, even though we're on the water. That's something we make sure that we're hydrated and we're fueled and ready to rock and roll. And speaking of that, we need to take a break.
Well, let's take a break and go to our third segment because we got a couple more questions lined up.
All right, we're going to step outside and we'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
All right, we're halfway through, and we're just scratching the surface barely.
And folks, if you're listening to the podcast, there's things in the breaks on our live feed on Facebook, or if you're catching this on, you got to see it on YouTube, because there's things we talk about in the breaks that you won't see or you won't hear because you're listening to the commercials that we just ran. Mm-hmm. But you got to tune in, because some of the conversation we have in the breaks is just priceless. And we have an admission.
He's backing up on his statement now, I see.
Well, Nancy said she never heard of it till last year.
I find that hard to believe, too. Nancy, we're going to have a talk.
Oh, boy. All right. You had a question coming out of the gate.
Information-wise, we talked about this a little bit in the break, but I want to expand on it just a touch. You'd mentioned that a certain lake supposedly didn't have fish in it. Did you do research prior to, or was there a pamphlet you got there at maybe like the camp station or something that had all the pertinent info on it and maybe like a guide map or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's been talked about for a while. Lake de Sueur was the lake I was talking about. That was not supposed to have any fish in it, but it was still safe to pump water and go swimming or whatever. we were supposed to go down to, I believe it's called Lake Ritchie, and there were signs posted all over the place, and there were park rangers that we ran into that said, do not pump water out of Lake Ritchie because they're experiencing an algae bloom, and it could be dangerous. And there were lots of postings, and everybody on the trail was talking about it. Don't pump out of Lake Ritchie.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah,
that they were adamant about that.
It sounds like they got really good communication on that island.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking, he talked a little bit about taking care of business.
Yep.
In the latrine bag. Got to ask. You know we're going to ask. How do you use the latrine in the middle of the woods?
So,
I mean, I generally think I got a good idea, but for those who don't know.
Right. So there are I want to say porta-johns, but there are rustic restrooms at the campsites.
Okay.
And when we say rustic, there's a hole in the ground and there is a throne on top of it, and that's about it.
Okay.
And it's not very glamorous. And there's also very rarely any toilet paper in those bathrooms. So you absolutely want to take your own toilet paper on your hike.
Okay.
Yeah, and or baby wipes. Yeah.
So here's the next obvious question. How much TP do you need to bring with you for a week?
Another great question. So we were debating that. I ended up buying a package of baby wipes, and then I think we took a third of that for you and I, and then I had about half a roll or a third of a roll of toilet paper, dry toilet paper, that I had folded in half and crushed and put in a Ziploc bag to keep it from getting wet in case we got rained on. And that's what the two of us took. And I came home with extra.
Okay.
He wasn't limited to 3 squares.
That's good to know.
I was willing to share a square.
There you go. See?
It's like, I packed my bag. Son, you should have packed your bag a little bit better. There's some poison ivy leaves over there. Have at it.
Right, have at it. Pine needles.
Yikes.
Poison ivy. Is there poison ivy there?
There is poison ivy there, and you do have to watch out for it. But it's not like the place is covered with it. There was one plant, and I didn't look it up, and it had this beautiful, huge, like 5-pointed leaf, and that stuff was all over the island. It was sort of lower to the ground. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's kind of cool is like they have this cutworm that are infecting some of the pine trees right now, and so they'll eat the tips of the pine needles off. But the whole island, in my opinion, smelled like a Christmas tree farm. Okay. It really smelled good.
Okay. Now, backing up just a little bit, we talked about the latrine and all that kind of good stuff, but you're breaking camp every single night. You're there, taking your tent, packing it up in the morning, taking it with you, resetting again. Is there designated spots on that island that you can only pitch a tent, or can you camp anywhere you want?
That's a great question. They don't really encourage dispersed camping, which isn't to say that people don't do it, but they really, really want people camping in designated camp spots. And so there are places where you can set up a tent, as you saw, but there are also shelters that are available at practically all of the campsites. The campsites that are on the coast. The inner campsites, like in the middle of the island, are really tents only.
Okay. And talking about these shelters, explain a little bit about those.
They're a 3-sided wood structure with basically one wall is all screen and a screen door. So you have room, if it was really like a bad mosquito season or a bad black fly season, you have the ability to get out of the bugs, and you can set your bedroll up on the ground or on the wood floor and lay all of your gear out and not have to worry about being out in a swarm of bugs, which is really nice. They're kept really clean. People do a really nice job of sweeping them out and having them ready for the next user. And there's a lot of really great graffiti written on the inside walls and ceilings of those shelters. Like you could spend an evening just reading all of the stuff that people have written. And you're not supposed to write on the inside of them. And we never did. But there's some fun reading.
Right?
I got to ask, was Kilroy there?
I think somebody did actually write what was here in one of the shelters.
Nice. You got to ask that question, right? You got to know if Kilroy was there. Someone asked, you saw a lot of people. Are you able to bring a dog with you or pet?
Oh, that's a good question. I've never seen a dog on the trail. That's a great question. I have no idea.
Okay, because like Tom said, he wants to bring his best friend, his dog, and I would, as long as you could get him there, I don't see why not.
The only thing I could see is safety-wise.
with
possibly
the wolves.
will the wolves possibly? I mean, I don't know.
That would be one of my concerns. Would be something of that nature.
Also, your dog can't carry his own stuff.
Very true, and that adds to weight.
Yeah.
So,
Unless he's a Saint Bernard, didn't
Right.
put one of them big kegs underneath his chin and
Pack him
carry
up.
his bedroll.
How many hours a day do you spend hiking?
Oh, that's a good question. 5 to 6,
yeah, I'd say
depending on our 5 to 6, depending on our breaks. We were averaging a little over 10 miles a day, which was kind of like, you don't need to do that, and you certainly don't need to plan hiking across the whole island. You can come into Wendigo or Rock Harbor, which are the two main ports, and do some spoke hikes from there and see a lot of really great stuff. So it's not that you have to do the whole island. But we would get up and we would, like, I don't know, sometimes we woke up at 6 o'clock and we're like, let's get on the trail. And we would try to get into camp like by 1 or 2 and set up camp and then have the rest of the day to sort of rest and recuperate.
Okay. I got a picture up right now. It's a geo marker. We talked about this before the show, but explain how you came across this and the significance of it, as the people out there obviously don't know this.
So we had pulled off the side of the trail on some of these large rocks to have some lunch. And we're cooking our meals. We get our cookers out and we're cooking and we're eating. And my son just happens to notice right next to him. He looks down and there's this brass sort of looking thing in the rock. And we're like, what is that? And it was from the Park Service or the Forest Service from like the 30s.
Yeah.
And it was like worn, like you never would have found this. We just happened to sit down and have lunch there. And it was this cool little thing that said, like, if anybody's found tampering with this, the fine is 25 cents for messing with this marker. And it was just like, we got to get a picture of that. That's kind of cool.
And that was from what, 1937, I believe?
I think 37.
Yeah, it was
something like that.
Something.
So, with that being said, I think inflation has definitely went up just a little bit.
You're going to pay a little bit more for moving that today.
Yeah. Oh, it says 1938 on it.
38, okay.
Yeah. So, Danny, it's going to cost you $0.25 if you mess with it, so don't touch it.
I ain't touching it. That's for sure.
That's crazy. That is literally, I mean, to see a survey mark out, that's one of the last things you'd think that you would bump into out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I know they survey stuff, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, just by luck.
What are some what's another thing that we don't have a picture of that you found there and it just blew your mind?
Yeah, I don't know if we got any pictures. There are moose sheds all over the place.
Oh yeah,
because
I did see a few of those. Yep.
There's no porcupine to eat them, and you can't take them. Of course, that's it's a national park, but you'll see moose sheds all over the place.
Wow, that's incredible.
I
A lot
know,
of people
right?
pay
It's
good
really-
money for those things, I mean, that's probably why you
Yeah.
can't take them, so that makes sense.
Oh, you'd have scavengers right out of the gate, right?
Absolutely.
And so you've tracked all day, or 5 or 6 hours. You're resting. It's getting dark. When it gets dark, and it does get dark, as soon as you shut your flashlights off, what was like the stars, northern lights maybe? How was that during the night?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really amazing. It was like forecasted or whatever. We were told that there's a possibility of some northern lights, but we didn't see any. But like just the stars were amazing, and it was super cool because we were going to bed at probably 6 or 7 o'clock every night. So I hadn't seen like a night sky yet, and it was like our 4th day, and I was like, I want to set an alarm and wake up and see the stars, and we did, and we got out of the shelter that we got at like around midnight and just stood around and looked at the sky. It was really, really cool.
Unbelievable. Like so little light pollution. You can see the Milky Way. You can see satellites. You guys know if you get up in northern Michigan away from, big towns, the star watching is so much better. Well, it's unbelievable on Isle Royale.
That's truly a what they call a dark zone,
Right.
A dark location.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for miles, right?
Absolutely.
And speaking of that, you got to admit, how are the bugs? How are the black flies? How are the mosquitoes?
So, like I said before, I discovered Picardin. Somebody on some video said I've gone to using Picardin over DEET, and I was using that and I did fine. Actually ended up buying Joe a bug suit that he wore a lot of the time, and it was just, a mesh suit that went over his shorts and his t-shirt, and that was really helpful too. But honestly, we didn't get into swarms of like black flies and mosquitoes. They were there, but I have been up there where my buddy John and I hiked through some bad swarms, and he got hit bad. So that's where the bug suit came in from his experience, and he's like, it doesn't weigh much, and it gives you that protection. But I was fine with the bug spray or the Picardin.
Okay.
Do you know how to spell that?
Picardin, and it comes in kind of a lotion. And the nice thing about it is, unlike DEET, it's not super stinky.
Okay.
And even after I put it on, because I usually don't put on lotion, but I didn't feel like really oily or anything like that.
And you can apply it right to your skin?
Yep, a little dab. It's almost like sunblock.
Okay, Danny's calling that up here.
I'm looking for a good picture of it.
Yeah, if you can find it, pull it up and I'll throw it up on the screen. Looking back at this thing and planning ahead, is there anything that you wanted to take with you? And maybe you checked a website or the Forest Service or something, they said, you cannot take this. I mean, is there a list of things that you cannot bring on island?
Not that I know of. We ran into people that were carrying firearms for just in case they ran into had a wolf encounter.
Okay.
I always have a pocket knife on me. That's not an issue. The firearm is a little bit of an issue if you take the plane, but I don't think it's an impossibility. You have to contact the airline and say, give it over to the captain, and they secure it for you, and then you can get it back.
Okay.
Because we took the plane, we couldn't take the isobutane packs for our cookers. We had to buy them there. But if you take the boat, it's not an issue.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's anything they said you couldn't take.
Okay. You talk about the butane cartridges. That's one thing that I was going to ask you about. As far as you cooking your meals, I know typically, Jet Boil brand, you can take and boil I think it's a liter or a half liter of water in that, and it takes I think like 60 seconds. So with that being said, and how much water you needed, or if you're purifying it that way in any way, shape, or form, how many butane bottles did you take for your little personal cooker?
We took one that I used for the both of us that I cooked. I boiled water for both of our meals, and I had leftover.
Okay.
And not only that, but when we came into Wendigo, outside the little store there were a couple of milk crates that people had left, like unused containers of fuel. So if you wanted to grab an extra, they were free. You could just grab one if you wanted to carry the weight, just as in case you ran out.
Okay. Yeah, because
so,
you can't take it back with you either.
Right. So
and the smaller size, like not the giant ones.
Yeah, it wasn't really huge. It was the kind of the standard Coleman size that you might find at Walmart.
Oh, like a bottle,
No, not even. No. This was like
the little ones, like 2 or 3 inches tall and maybe 4 inches around.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
There you go. And I like that they put a crate out there for people that like you said, you can't take it, so don't let it go to waste. Let the next person try it.
Yeah. Don't buy two if you think you're going to need to. Buy one and take one of the extras.
Right.
That's a great idea. I think, and I'd use the extra and run that off for a tap.
Oh, absolutely.
That way you get rid of one of those and leave one back for somebody else.
Right, exactly. So, coming up on our break?
Yeah, we're running a little bit long here. So,
all right, last break coming up, folks. Got any questions? Get them in, and we'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Well, we made it to the last segment, and I've probably got a million questions. I wish I would have wrote some questions, on a piece of paper, scribble something down to where I could. And that's the thing about this show. We never
preempt question. We don't preempt it because we chase rabbits.
Yeah. So.
And you know what? And Brad he's so close. If we ever need to get a hold of him, I think I know where I can find him.
Sure.
Right.
As long as he's not trying to avoid you. like I do sometimes.
I know. All right. He won't pick up.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're coming into our last segment of the show. So with that being said, overall, you did a great. Are you going to do it again?
I think I would. I know my son definitely wants to do it. My good friend John has talked about doing a solo hike for years. And so he's trying to convince my son we should do solo hikes, and we'll start at opposite ends of the island, and we'll cross paths, and we'll have a meal or whatever, and we'll meet, and then we'll keep going our separate ways, and meet back in Houghton.
You guys have watched too much Alone.
Yes, that's true.
Because they did an episode like that. There was teams of 2, and they separated them, and the one person had to find the camp of where the other one was at.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's. But that, you know what? That's an interesting twist. I like that.
I know, right? So you and Nancy stop at opposite ends in your kayaks, and
No. You never leave your wingman when you're kayaking. Never,
Right?
Never. Because and that's something I want to get somebody on that's kayaked up there to talk about that, because it's basically Lake Superior is a sea. I don't care how you look at it. That's what it is. I mean, there's some huge waves,
Right.
And looking at the topography, we talked about this actually before the show. The beach, that's one thing, where you guys the first sets of pictures we showed, it's just stones. And
it's Michigan Beach.
It's a gradual roll up, but there's also pictures towards the end that I show, and they're from you guys, and it's huge rocks and cliffs. So
Yes.
you really got to know your topography before you go.
Exactly. There are a couple of docks. Like there's a dock at Daisy, and there's a dock at McCargo, and a dock at Todd. But yeah, there are a lot of big rocky areas that you don't want to try to beach a kayak on.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It'll beat you up against the rocks.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
So you'll have to get a list of questions. Maybe we can have him back on. He'll knock them out.
Did you see anybody with kayaks there?
We saw a lot of people with kayaks.
Oh, yeah.
Like the long sea kayaks that are super thin.
Mm-hmm.
Our last day, we were sort of just hanging out by the lodge, and it was a beautiful day, and we're looking out at the water. And there was a whole crew of people that are strapping down their packs to their kayaks and heading out.
That's something I want to do.
There you go.
Could you do you have any indication as to maybe the length of them?
The ones that we saw looked like they were at least 16 foot.
Okay, that makes sense. So
yeah, they look pretty long.
Okay, we run
now
14 and a half footers is what we have.
And there are people that do the same thing with the canoe. You can portage straight through the island.
Okay.
And go from the north side and come down through the south side. And as a matter of fact, I talked to a gentleman who had done that several years, and he and his son were doing it the same time we were up there.
Okay.
And my buddy and I have talked about doing that, because that would be a kind of a cool way to see parts of the island you might not normally see.
Okay, and they were going down through the middle of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can jump from lake to lake to lake to lake.
Yep.
I got you.
Yes. And there,
Okay.
he did say, man, there were a couple of portages that were, this one was like almost 2 miles that they're portaging this canoe with their gear, and up and down hills, and not easy, but doable.
Okay. We got just a few minutes before we get into our usual questions, but there's a picture here I want to throw up here. I've just got to find it. Talk a little bit about the tower. I mean, that was a random picture that piqued my curiosity, and I saw the pictures after the fact, and I know why it's there now, but go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
So I don't know when they erected all of the fire towers, but there are several fire towers along the Greenstone Ridge, which goes through the center of the island.
Okay.
And my friend John has been wanting to get to the Ojibwe fire tower. It's Mount Ojibwe, actually, for like 7 years, and he's never been able to make it. And we're like, let's do it. It's bucket list time. Let's go. And we got a beautiful, clear day, and we got to climb up the tower, and you could just see miles and miles and miles. As a matter of fact, you could see Canada from up there. And it was really cool. It actually was a little cold because you're the highest place on the island, and the breeze was just whipping.
Okay. And you mentioned Fire Tower. You were there in July. I know today in the news we had a story where I work at the TV station about forest fires there. This is a small 6-acre fire they had just contained. And I had asked you before the show, you had mentioned last year there was forest fires, but you did not come across any of the burns.
No, we didn't. Everything was really lush and green and looked like it had completely been missed by the fires.
Okay. All right. Another picture here I want to throw up here real quick. I know the answer already. The journal. I was going to say, did you journal? But obviously you did because you got a journal picture here. Talk about why you did that.
Partly, I wanted to do it for myself so that years from now, and there's the light. Years from now, we could go back and talk about what did we do on this day, and do you remember that? And just try to capture that. I've actually started journaling just myself personally every day, but I do it on the computer.
Okay.
And so I bought a little kind of like a field notes kind of thing that was waterproof. And it's not easy because you get back into camp and you're tired and it's like, nope, I got to sit down and I got to talk about what we saw today and what we did and, who we ran into. And I'm glad I did that. Just like I said, so that years from now, maybe my grandkids will see it, or we'll tell them stories about the time that their dad and their grandpa went up and hiked all the way across Isle Royale.
There you go. So when you say hiked all the way across, how many miles did you put on?
So we ended up over the course of a 6-day hike, right around 65 miles. If you're just looking at the map, we did some major elevation changes as well, because there are two really quite tall ridges, the Greenstone and the Menong Trail. And so we went one day from the northern coast of the island, up the Menong Trail, down the Menong Trail, through the valley, up the Greenstone, and down the Greenstone to get to Daisy. And that was a really challenging day because the elevation, especially when you're wearing a pack, just, puts it to you.
Now, I just lost train of thought what I was going to ask. Doggone it. We're showing a picture of the map right now. Did you kayak, or not kayak, did you hike from Wendigo to the opposite end and then leave from that point?
Yeah, so we got dropped off at Wendigo and we kind of did a crescent moon shape down to Feldman, did the Feldman Loop because we heard that there was a lot of great moose watching that way. And then from there, we went over to Siskiwit Bay. And then we went up sort of to the middle to Dessur. And then from Dessur, we went up to Todd Harbor. From Todd, we went over to Macargo. From Macargo, we went down to Daisy. And then we went from Daisy to Rock Harbor.
Okay. Now, before we start asking our usual questions, if somebody were to do this and you say, you've got to go here and see this, and is there anything you wanted to see and you go, man, I wish we'd have got to that you didn't see?
Oh, that's a good one. What was there was a Mosky Basin.
Yeah.
We were initially going to do a little hook down on the south end of the island at a place called Mosky Basin. But in order to do that, it was like a one-way in, one-way out. And because the only great place to pump water would have been Lake Ritchie. We just decided not to do it because of the algae bloom.
Okay.
So that was one thing on our trip that we didn't end up doing.
Okay.
Or the little day hike that we did with that.
Oh, yeah, we went out to Scoville Point.
Yeah. That was...
At the very eastern end of the island, you can hike out to Scoville Point, which is basically the easternmost tip of the island. And there's a really cool little cabin there, like this little artisan cabin that I guess you can apply to go stay there and just sort of like be a hermit and do your thing, write your book or do your paintings. And that's a really cool place to go see. And that takes about 3 miles out there?
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Definitely worth it.
Cool.
The Mount Ojibwe Fire Tower was super great. I think our favorite camp was Macargo because it was just such a social thing. People came out of their tents and we all got to hang out at the campfire together. But the whole place is really great.
Definitely recommend it for people.
Absolutely. And of course, you always tell people, do it sooner than later. Do it when your knees are good, your ankles are good, when your back is good. But honestly, we saw people out there. We ran into a group of young women who were there. They were there for 2 weeks. And the oldest was 20, and I think the youngest was about Joe's age, about 14. And we were talking about pack weight and things like that. And they had asked us, hey, what do your packs weigh? And we said, I don't know, 30, 37 pounds, and whatever. And they said, whoa. And we were like, yeah, that's a lot of weight. And they're like, our packs are 60 pounds. And we were like, joking?
Wow.
And they were carrying around so much stuff. And they weren't these big beefy girls. They were just regular run-of-the-mill people, but they were happy and they're carrying around twice the weight. So I would tell people, go do it at least one time. You can do it, but it's so beautiful, and get out there and do it, experience it.
Absolutely.
Well, I got a question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to let this kind of lead into the questions that Danny's going to ask you. All except one he's going to give me. He doesn't. We talked about that before the show, or maybe in the break. I can't remember. But anyway, and I'll save that for the appropriate time. But what is next on your bucket list? Appalachian Trail, or have you done that?
No, when we were talking about it. I don't know if you're familiar with the store in Fenton called Red Fox. They were an outfitter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They had a lecture series, and a gentleman came in and did a talk on the Porcupine Mountains and how great it was. And again, that's here in Michigan. That's in quote unquote in our backyard, even though it's 10 hours away or something like that.
Yep.
So we talked about doing the Porkies as well, but yeah, the Appalachian Trail is definitely something that we want to. I don't know if we want to tackle the entire thing, but certainly to do chunks of it and say, we did a little bit of that. But, you get on the AT and then you're dealing with, like, all sorts of different animals that we didn't have to worry about in Michigan, like copperheads and, bears and all sorts of stuff. But,
Sure.
That's the other thing is, like, you feel relatively safe on Isle Royale, even though there are wolves.
Mm-hmm.
They have such an abundant food supply with the wolf population that, you just don't hear of the wolves bothering people.
True. Yeah, you don't hear stories about it, at least not in the media or anything like that. But
right.
Have you heard of the Great North American Trail that runs from Vermont out to the Dakotas that comes through Michigan?
I have heard of it. I haven't done enough studying on it to know exactly where it picks up. But yeah, I've heard of that. What's the Pacific? There's a Pacific Coast or there's a Pacific Coast Trail or a Pacific Crescent Trail or something like that. And of course, once you get into hiking, you hear about the John Muir Trail out west. All of them sound like really great places. We've gotten to be out in Montana and see how beautiful that state is. But again, there's like getting out there with all your gear, and I'm kind of the kind of person that's like, there's so much to explore in Michigan. I'd like to see all of this state, first before I decide I want to go, hundreds of miles someplace else.
Sure.
Exactly. Like you just said, to get over there to the west side of the UP from here, it's a good 10-hour trip. Or to Crystal Falls, where I'm at, is 8 or 7. But that 8 hours, you can be in Nashville. But yet, But like you said,
right.
There is so much in this state. Whether you're in the UP or you're in the lower, it's amazing.
Well, one more question here for Joe. Did your buddies, when you told them, hey, this is what I'm going to do, did they say before or after you got back and you told the stories? You're crazy, man. There's no way I'd do that. I'd rather sit home and play on my Xbox.
Most, I have one really good friend who's very similar to me in the liking the outdoors and hunting and hiking and stuff like that. And he doesn't do as much hiking. And when I told him about that, he was just like super jealous. He was like, "Oh, I want to go be in the woods for a week." Like, lucky.
Right.
So yeah, I did have some other friends that I told, and they were like, "Yeah, there's no way I could do that." Like,
you can do it. If you
they
put
didn't
your
even
mind to it.
think about the possibility of that happening. But yeah.
Yeah, as young as you are now, I think as you get older, this trip, you're going to look back at it at some point, and you're going to really realize just how monumental of a trip that is. I mean, because I'm almost 57, and that's been on my bucket list for quite a while. And for you to do it at 14, or I don't know if you just turned 14 or not, maybe it was 13 when you went, but anyway, at your age, to be able to do something like that, man, I'm very envious of you. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. So, Danny, I'm going to turn you loose here. I know we got a few minutes left. And
We do got a few minutes left, and obviously, all right. This is a throw-in question because he said it. So, you guys ready for hunting season?
We're getting there.
Preparing.
We just went out and did a 3D shoot last weekend.
I saw that.
And we've been trying to run arrows just about every night, and tuning up the bows. Joe had a problem with his D-loop, so we had to run that out to the local archery shop and get a new D-loop put on. And we're cutting shooting lanes, and we're seeing deer, and we're getting geared up.
That's awesome.
Local shop. That's got to be Sunrise.
That'd be Sunrise.
There you go.
Big
Sunrise,
Big shout out to Sunrise. I've been there twice in the last few days. I took my brother there, got him set up. Took Gabby there, got her set up.
And Derek's going to be on in a couple weeks.
Derek's going to be on, and 2 weeks talking about that. So, end of the show, we've got a few questions. You drove up to where you were going to go from there to Isle Royale, correct?
Correct.
So, you were driving.
Yes.
Somebody was driving. What were you guys listening to on the radio?
Def Leppard.
Def Leppard.
Yes.
We're listening from Def Leppard.
There you go.
Joe, you're an 80s rocker, 90s rocker?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It's strange. My kids are the same way.
70s, but a little bit 80s.
Wow. Mostly 70s.
See, now that's so cool because I've always told my kids that my generation had the best music there ever was, and they're just now realizing it. So
easily,
right? All right, you guys are rocking it out to Def Leppard. You're driving up there. There's got to be some snacks in that vehicle. What's the go-to snack to have?
Oh,
I had chili cheese Fritos,
and we had those garlic meat sticks that Mark brought.
Oh yeah, those were really good.
Yeah,
yeah, meat sticks.
Had
and
some
Fritos.
meat sticks and Fritos.
Nice.
And a Sprite.
Yeah, at every stop.
All right, I'm gonna turn this last question.
Well, you'll have one more after.
Can I have one more after?
Yeah, I want the meal one.
Oh, you want the meal? Okay. Well, ask the meal one now.
Okay. All right. So you take Danny and I on an outdoor excursion. We're going to go hiking part of the North American Trail. I've done part of it up in White Cloud. And
okay.
You said we're going to camp out, bring your gear with you, and we do our day hike. And you said, don't worry about the food, guys. I'm going to bring the food. What are you going to prepare for us, your best go-to hiking dried camp food?
It's got to be Thanksgiving dinner.
You think so? Not the ramen bomb?
Okay, it's a tie.
Okay.
It's a tie. The ramen bomb was good, but the Thanksgiving dinner's also.
So, yep, Thanksgiving dinner.
You got to explain what's in
Stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy. Yep.
That I'll never pass up a Thanksgiving dinner.
Never.
Even if it is freeze-dried.
There you go.
It was surprisingly good.
Surprisingly good.
Surprisingly good.
That worries me just a little bit.
Right? All right. So after we had this great meal, we're sitting down around the campfire. I'll direct this one at Joe. Give me a favorite story that you would tell Mike and I, maybe from your Isle Royale hiking trip. What would be that story that, man, it just impacted you when you did it?
So many. Okay, so this is kind of a funny one. So when we were on the trail, we definitely had some moments where we got a little slap happy, little tired, and just started saying stuff. And I was wearing my bug suit at the time. I was wearing my bug suit, and Dad's friend John goes like, what if you were a superhero and you were Bug Suit Boy?
And
so that for the rest of the trip, whenever I had my bug suit on, they would be like talking about the adventures of Bug Suit Boy. So
as a matter of fact, I think we stopped at there was a shelter that had a log in it that people would write stuff and then leave it for the next campers. And I wrote an entry on behalf of Bug Suit Boy.
That's good stuff.
There you go. And you know what? You're going to remember that for a long time. And you might want to hold on to that thought and kind of write it down, because if you ever see somebody comes out with that,
you know where it comes from.
Yep.
Right.
One last question I want to throw at you. It's just because he mentioned this about getting tired and slap happy. Was there any really good camp pranks that were played on you, or did you play them on somebody else?
It wasn't. Well, the superior thing wasn't a prank. That was just
that was
that was bad.
So we told Joe, and we didn't do this because I didn't want to be mean to my son, but we're like, the thing is, when you go on a trip like this with a bunch of guys, like, you have to always unpack everything out of your bag because you don't know who's slipping rocks into your pack when you're not looking.
Right?
So you're like, why is this pack feeling heavier every time? Then you pull out 15 pounds of rocks.
There you go.
Nice.
Never trust your hiking partners.
That's right. So now we know if it starts feeling heavy, it's not because we're tired, it's because it's getting heavier.
Right, exactly.
It's getting heavier, right.
That's good stuff.
So,
well, guys, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate you taking an hour plus out of your evening to reminisce about the trip.
Thanks for having us.
You said something there early on about romanticizing adventures like this. And, there's a lot of truth in that. But I think that romanticizing a trip and remembering those memories is really, that's why we do them. we challenge ourselves, but we also want that memory to carry on and pass on to others.
What do we always say? Mark Coleman says it too. Making memories.
Yep, it's the adventure, man. It's always about the adventure. So whether it be hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, kayaking, horseback riding, whatever.
Exactly.
So, but I tell you, as we wrap up the show, for those who are listening on the podcast, make sure you go over to iTunes and give us a review. That helps us, and it helps the people who help us as well. And did you guys start a Facebook page about this trip or anything, or did you just have your own personal social media?
I've got my own personal thing, and I did post about it.
Okay.
Just like throwing up pictures. Hey, great time on Isle Royale, that sort of thing. Nothing really in depth. I haven't published the stuff that I wrote in my journal just because I didn't think anybody other than myself would find it that interesting.
Okay.
It's I certainly am willing to talk to anybody about it and encourage people to go do it and talk about gear and talk about prep, because somebody did that for us when we were getting ready to do it. Somebody encouraged us. I'm like, yeah, you can totally go do it. And you don't need to break the bank with gear. You can do it reasonably priced.
Well, if anybody is looking for that kind of information, personal message, the Up North Journal, and we'll put you in contact.
Yep, absolutely. Get a hold of us, and we'll make the connection, and he'll help you out. And like you said,
we don't want to give you out your phone number or contact right now, not personal stuff. So, but for those of you who are actually watching the live stream, give us a like, follow, share the show for us, please, as well. That helps us, in turn helps the people who support us. So,
and if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. We need some more subscribers. If you're listening on anything else, share it. Tell everybody about it.
Absolutely.
And next week,
that was my question.
We've got Chad Stewart.
That's right. I got to reach out to him.
Yes,
you
do.
That we've got that.
Make sure we got that all set up. Down. It's going to be a good show.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Guys, hang on real quick after the show. We'll chat afterwards. But we'll be back again next Wednesday night, 7:30, as long as we don't get some of those bad storms and the creeks don't rise.
Right.
So,
there you go.
All right, folks. Thanks again, guys. And that'll do it for us this week. We'll see y'all next week.
This episode was brought to you by PSC Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Packer Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal.